We are live. I mean, of course, we've been live for a few seconds. I just wanted to let everybody know as soon as they go live, we're gonna start listening. Hopefully, it'll be soon. Mac's always on time, unlike me. Gonna share out. Oh, wait a sec. Let's put on some of this music until. Here we go. Bro, I swear my cat and his obsession with TV screens. Here we go.
Okay, welcome everyone. We'll just give it a minute here to let people join. So we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks to everyone for joining us on this webinar. Just some housekeeping items. If you would like to ask a question, you can do it in one of two ways. One, you can go to the Q&A section, the button that's on the bottom of your screen, and you can ask a question by clicking on the Q&A. I believe you can also raise your hand, and if you want to be elevated to be a direct participant with video, I think we can accomplish that too. And let me go ahead and get started. First, I'm Mac Caddo, Senior Fellow on
That's
Public
cool.
Policy with the American Kratom Association. And this webinar is to provide an update to the Kratom community about some of the challenges that we're confronting
Jen, put me on
right
the
now in
screen real quick.
the political landscape across the country. I'll start first with the DEA issue. I know that there are a lot of questions about why the DEA has not yet responded to
Look
the
at
request
her.
by Secretary Kennedy and FDA
She is
Commissioner
so
McCary to
precious.
schedule 70H. This is a process that does take time. The
She's so
process that is
sweet.
going on right now is the DEA is evaluating the recommendation and the basis for the Schedule 1
Baby.
recommendation. The DEA has two choices at this point. One is to go with temporary scheduling, and that's exactly the process they used in 2016 when they made their initial recommendation to schedule kratom in federally under the Controlled Substances Act, and that, of course, ended up being withdrawn. But that process essentially provides that if it's temporary scheduling, that it goes into effect within 30 days of the publication in the Federal Register of the notice of intent to do temporary scheduling on 70H. That means that there's no judicial review and there's no public comment period. That particular scheduling recommendation stays in effect for 2 years, with the possibility that the Attorney General could request a third year. But during that period, they would, at the DEA, develop a recommendation portfolio for permanent scheduling. So it's likely that, given the exigent circumstances that were outlined by Secretary Kennedy and by Commissioner McCary, that they will move forward with temporary scheduling. They're still, as I said, in that process of gathering information. The proponents of 70H will have the opportunity to do exactly what we did in 2016, and to the extent that they can make their case for withdrawing that recommendation, that will be a decision we made by the DEA. For those of you that remember in 2016, the case that we made was that there were a substantial number of peer-reviewed published articles that outlined the safety profile of kratom, and that the ban that was being proposed, or the scheduling of kratom as a Schedule 1 substance, was not justified based on that significant body of evidence. The issue that, as I understand the response from the 70H community, is basically that they have a significant number in nearing 1 billion doses without there being any significant adverse events associated with it, including a focus on the fact that there haven't been a significant number of deaths, or any deaths, that have been the result of the use of 70H products. That's something that is a part of the evaluation, but it is not, if you look at the 8 factors, the principal factor. Of the 8 factors, there are 7 that relate to either the addiction profile and liability of the substance, or in factor 6, where it focuses on the imminent threat that is posed to the American public. So there's really only one of the 7 factors that relate to public health impacts that really associates with deaths that are, that are claimed for a substance. And the others all look at the quality of life issues associated with addiction liability. So that process will be undertaken, and we know that there are some reviews that have been started by some scientists on the 70H issue that will, of course, be evaluated to the extent that they can be completed prior to the decision. And then, of course, during the course of the 2 to 3 years when the temporary scheduling would be in effect, assuming the DEA proceeds with scheduling, where that evaluation will take place. So that's the status at the federal level. One interesting thing is that we will continue to pursue the Kratom Consumer Protection Acts in the state, which will restrict, in the language that we have promoted since 2019, when the first KCPA was enacted, that we put in those restrictions on 70H products, specifically that a product could not contain more than 2% of the overall fraction of the alkaloids in the product could be 70H. We are strengthening that language as we go forward to include a per serving size of not greater than 1 milligram. And we also are going to encourage states to not allow any product that's marketed exclusively as a 70H product. The basis for that is relatively simple. A pure leaf kratom product and a properly manufactured extract products has as a component of the product the majority of the alkaloids being metrogeny. And then you have on the other side the flip of that, where the majority of the compound in a 70H product is in fact a chemically manipulated 70H compound. And we think that until and if they can demonstrate the safety profile of that compound in that product formulation that's required by federal law, that they should be subject to this scheduling until they have the science. And remember, the federal law says that the manufacturer has to have a reasonable basis for safety under the conditions of use, which means labeling, prior to market entry. And we have on the record the chief or lead scientist that was representing HART, the Holistic Alternative Recovery Trust, who said in a public forum that they didn't have any of that science and they were working to get it by mid 2025 and then ongoing into 2026. And again, if they're able to do that, they can petition to be back on the market if they have that kind of safety data. that will help them. So that's where we are at the federal level. We are changing the draft of the Kratom Consumer Protection Act at the federal level to accommodate some of the issues that have been raised by HHS and the FDA with respect to these products. And that we're hopeful that we can resolve that and get that bill filed here in the next few weeks. And then I think it's appropriate to note a couple of things that are happening at the federal level. I had a report yesterday that in a locality in Colorado, that a local health inspector was going out to inspect the retail establishments in his county and to do a sweep about 7-OH products. And he was accompanied for the first time in his knowledge by a DEA agent who was specifically looking for 7-OH vape products and advising retailers who sold those that they were currently illegal under federal law. And so I think that it evidences the fact that both the FDA and the DEA are advancing their initiative going forward. So that's the situation on the federal landscape that we're dealing with right now. In terms of the states, we have a lot of activity going on in the states. Some of it has been prompted by the announcement that was made on July 29th by Secretary Kennedy and Commissioner McCary. And some of the news reports that flowed from that were wrong, both sometimes in the headline, and sometimes the headline was bad, but the article was fairly balanced. Many cases, the headline was bad and the article was bad because these reporters simply did not do their research or read carefully the specific objections that the FDA and HHS have to 7-OH products, and they conflated kratom into it. And the result of that is that we have some public officials that they're misinterpreted what the FDA was doing. A classic example of that is Governor DeWine in Ohio, who reacted to the headlines and reports that he received from a family who represents that their child died from kratom overdose, that he then ordered the Board of Pharmacy in Ohio to start the emergency scheduling of all kratom products. That led to a discussion between Secretary Kennedy and Governor DeWine, and the result of that discussion was that emergency scheduling directive was suspended, and it's now continuing to be under consideration. No one can take solace in the fact that it hasn't been done because we don't know what the final outcome of that will be, but we're working closely with legislators in the state of Ohio to hopefully convince the governor that his focus should really be on 7-OH as the federal focus is, and that there ought to be a regulatory scheme enacted under the Kratom Consumer Protection Act in Ohio that will provide for appropriate regulations on pure leaf kratom products and properly extracted products. We're seeing significant activity in the state of Florida, where the Attorney General, under the authority of a state statute that's very unique, was able to do an emergency scheduling of 7-OH. There are some problems, we think, with the way that was enacted, and some of the advice in consultation with the Florida Department of Agriculture that got the standard wrong. They decided to go with a 400 parts per million presence of 7-OH. We think that is on dry weight basis. We think that needs to be tweaked a little in order to make sure that that legitimate kratom products are allowed to be sold, and that while they're being transported into the state of Florida for manufacturing purposes and then manufactured there, that standard would not apply, because it is possible in the presence of raw materials prior to product formulation that in fact those manufacturers would be in violation and therefore become felons. So we obviously want to avoid that. We've had very productive discussions with the Attorney General's office and the Department of Agriculture, and those discussions are ongoing in order to resolve this problem. Currently, the Department of Agriculture has assured us that they will not be seizing products as long as the manufacturers are willing to commit to show the certificate of analysis, to demonstrate compliance, and then where there are labels that are not clearly differentiating that level that they could apply stickers temporarily while they recast their labeling and allow for a period of time for the current inventory to wash out. So we think that's reasonable. We still are going to continue to work with them on what the appropriate level should be so that we can resolve that issue. In the state of California, the legislature has concluded they did not move on the Kratom Consumer Protection Act, largely because the decision was made to suspend the evaluation of that bill based on input from the 7OH manufacturers prior to the federal government taking action in the form of HHS and FDA recommending scheduling. And so there will be an interim hearing that's held, and then I think there will be a movement towards a KCPA that will clarify all of those issues when they come back into session. But in the interim, we're hoping that the informational hearing will help to inform the California Department of Health that they should not be enforcing the standard that they have unilaterally applied to kratom products, because obviously it's 7OH that should be the target and emphasis by them, and we'll continue to work with them on those issues. In the state of Utah, there is a hearing tomorrow with the Rules Committee to evaluate a recommendation by the Department of Agriculture in Utah to assess a standard for the maximum amount of kava kratom products and the kavaloctones that are available. What they have presented to the legislature is approval for 125 milligrams of kavaloctones in a kava kratom product. We at the American Kratom Association had worked with scientists, and there was at the time of the evaluation, the view of the scientists that we discussed this with, there were questions about whether there was enough science to verify all of this being the correct levels. We have since been informed that based on the evaluation of additional scientific literature, that level of kavaloctones needs to be higher, and because it's safe. And so we're going to be, we have already communicated to the Rules Committee there in Utah that we would support increasing that level of the kavaloctones because of the demonstrated safety profile based on science. In the state of, well, in multiple states, Colorado, New Mexico, North Dakota, in Illinois, in Tennessee, in Pennsylvania, Ohio, of course, and New Jersey, and well, some in Florida, but we're dealing with that. We're seeing product seizures, and we're seeing some local government action by health departments locally. And so we are working close, Michigan, I should have added. So we're working closely as fast and furiously as we can to inform those health departments and to educate them about what the proper criteria is. And all of this is implicated by state laws that are sort of a patchwork of taking the federal food safety laws and then tweaks at the state level, which creates some problematic issues for us to be able to say, this is what the law says, because we have to, in each case, morph to those state laws. So we will continue to work on those issues and see where we are. In the state of Connecticut, and thank you to all of those Connecticut residents who stepped up and agreed to join in a petition to the Office of Consumer Safety, where we've asked for an in-person hearing on the directive provided in the legislation that kratom should be banned. We believe that the commissioner of the Office of Public Consumer Protection has an obligation to base that decision on science. And so we're going to be actively working with them, particularly in our call for a in-person hearing to provide both the legal and the scientific basis for that. What will happen is we submitted that application today, and we had the sufficient number. We had far more than's necessary of Connecticut residents. We were required to have at least 15, and we had far more than that. Thanks again to those that were willing to step up. So I'm certain that they will schedule this in-person hearing. And that hearing will take place, and then a rule will be formulated. Whatever the decision by the Office of Consumer Protection, whatever decision they make, it will then be subject to review by the governor, and then it has to be ratified by the legislature. So we will be into the next legislative session where we have had intense discussions and learned that the addition of the Kratom ban was made in the dark of night, just a day or two before the end of the session, hidden in a or embedded in a very large bill, and it just didn't come to the attention of the legislative leadership. I think that there will be, now that we see the action by the federal government, there will be an interest in modifying that requirement for scheduling and taking pure leaf kratom products and properly extracted products out of the equation. Another issue is Louisiana. Louisiana, of course, enacted a ban. And for all of those of you who have seen it, and if you haven't, I suggest you look at it. Representative Vigilo, who was the House sponsor of the ban bill, along with Senator Morris on the Senate side, was specifically asked on the floor of the House while they were deliberating the Kratom ban bill if what the impact of synthetic products were, and shouldn't that be the target? And her response, and if we don't have it on our website, we'll get it up for you. Her response is the classic anti-kratom response. The question was asked by a member of the House of Representatives. Representative Hilo said, there is no such thing as a synthetic kratom product. Now, this was prior to, of course, Commissioner McCary outlining exactly how the synthetic products are, in fact, designer opioids. And yet she denied that. And she went on to mock the efforts that we were making to try to educate the legislature about what the target really should be, which were, of course, these synthetic products. And she said there's no such thing as a synthetic product. And the lobbyist who told you that should be told that, meaning her, I was born at night, but not last night. And then she went on to repudiate our messaging. That's the basis for the passage of this bill. And so we're looking at seeking some help from the governor to suspend the enforcement of that bill until the legislature has the opportunity to revisit this in the context of accurate information that has been provided by the FDA and HHS. And importantly, the significant part of the narrative that was done by Senator Morris and Representative Bahio was based on the FDA and Kratom webpage. And so I think that their reliance on the FDA, if they're going to do that, and they did, then they should equally rely upon the advice and counsel of the FDA today on what the real problem is, where everyone heard Commissioner McCary and Secretary Kennedy say, we are not focusing on natural leaf products, we're focusing on these synthetic products. So I think that will be a significant help to us as we go forward. The challenge for us in going forward here in the upcoming 2026 legislative session will be to educate legislators about what the difference between natural leaf kratom and properly produced extracts and 7-OH, which is a chemically manipulated product, and from that education be able to focus on the KCPA legislation, and hopefully this will be a stimulus for it. And separately, there legitimately will be an effort to get states to do emergency scheduling of 7-OH themselves, because they can do it permanently, immediately, while the DEA will have to go through that two-step process that I described earlier. So that gives you a pretty good outline of where we are, currently. And I think in the questions we'll be able to see exactly what you may want to know along the way. So I see that Venus Usher has raised her hand. Can we elevate her to be a panelist and let her ask her question? Mark, are we able to do that? Okay, so Venus, you've been elevated. Unmute yourself, and you're welcome to get on camera, and so we can see you. And you're welcome to ask your question. Venus, you have to unmute yourself. Okay, I'm not sure exactly how to handle that. Um, who's the second person that's asked to be elevated? Who else has raised their hand? Okay, so oh,
Can
me,
you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes.
Oh,
So the floor is yours.
I, I'm sorry.
I can hear you now. Yes. So you have to turn off whatever's
I
in the
just want to
back.
let you know my cat stepped on the hands up thing, and I deeply apologize. Thank you, Mac, for all you do, and I'll talk to you later. I
Okay.
can't believe you did
Well,
that.
thank you. So while we're
I'm so
waiting
sorry.
here, no, no problem at all. I'll go to the questions, and then if people want to raise their hand, we can elevate you. Jenna asks for Connecticut residents. I've been trying to get in touch to advocate. Could you assist with that, please? I'd love to attend in person in any capacity that I can. That's great, Jenna. And so the best way to let us know, send an email. Mark, can we put up the email in the chat as to who they should contact in terms of being able to get on the list of Connecticut residents? And we'll put that up, Jen, in just a second, and you'll be able to know how to send an email. Jennifer asked, is there anything going on in Tennessee besides Jackson, Tennessee? I had the privilege of meeting with, during a National Conference of State Legislators meeting uh, that was held in Iceland a week and a half ago, with the House Majority Leader, who has in the past of Tennessee legislature, who in the past has been a pretty strong detractor of Kratom, and his name is Representative Lamberth, and we had a terrific conversation, and he told me that he's willing to work with us, that there is a legislator who has promoted the resolution which said that kratom should either be banned or regulated. He, of course, informed me that he can help with this, but she's hell bent in order to do this. So it was great to get that connection and relationship, and so we're reaching out to him here next week, and we'll start the process of trying to get the Tennessee in the proper order. Currently, Tennessee, it's legal to sell kratom. There was an issue that arose about whether or not extracts were illegal, and there were many people who believed that based on the wording of the statute that was passed years ago. And the Attorney General's office issued an Attorney General's opinion that said no, it was only synthetic kratom that was banned, not natural leaf products. So, including natural leaf extract products that were based on derivative of natural leaf. So, for those that are under the misimpression that kratom is somehow illegal in Tennessee, unless it's synthetic, it's not. But the threat is real, and we are going to be working hard in Tennessee. It's one of our top priorities, given the resolution that this legislator passed in the last session. So we're going to be working hard on that. The local bans are very difficult. We have limited resources. We do the very best we can. And the way that we decided to respond to that is that we recruited a fabulous local government team, volunteers that are doing a magnificent job, and they track all of these local bands as we're able to identify them. We have a service that scrapes the internet to try to identify before these bands are actually heard. It's not a perfect system because in some cases there are local governments that only put their agendas up on Facebook, and that's a very hard platform for a bot to go out and scrape data from. So we're always a little bit behind the curve when it comes to those localities that use that as their primary distribution mechanism. But if they post an agenda online on the web as part of their official websites, we can generally capture them. But some of these localities will say that they don't have to publish their agenda until 2 days before their hearings. And so that makes it difficult. But we do the very best we can. The people that are leading this local effort, Laura Romney, John Shinholzer, Heidi Sikora, are sort of the principals in that. Former Senator Kirk Ramble from Utah is a part of that effort. They do magnificent work, and so we're going to continue to do it. It would help us that if you identify a locality where a ban has been proposed, send it to us so that we can react accordingly. And so I think, and I would expect everyone that's able to do that to please join in and help us in that fight. So it's very important that we do that. Some of the things that are frustrating to us is that we go to these hearings and you'll hear the local people say, well, why would I listen to you? Because you're not a member of our community. You're not a resident. You don't live here. Why would I listen to you? And of course, Laura Romney lives in Utah. John Shinholzer lives in Virginia. Heidi Sikora lives in Wisconsin and has to travel and has a second home, I think, in Illinois so that she can get kratom legally. Uh, that's a legitimate complaint, but it's usually an excuse because what they should be interested in is the truth about what kratom is. And so we're handicapped a little when they take that very parochial attitude. And that's why it is critically important that we find people in the local communities, including the vendors of these kratom products, to show up at these public hearings so it takes away that argument that, well, who from the community cares about this to protect kratom? We just want to ban all of it. So this is a whack-a-mole kind of situation. We're doing the very best we can, and we welcome every bit of assistance that we're moving forward with on this. So thank you for all those who volunteer, who step up, who help, and I'd like to kind of encourage you to bootstrap this and get to these local hearings because it's very important for the reason I just outlined. Joseph Rubino said, as a store owner, can I sell kratom after October 1st? Joseph, I don't know what state you're in, so if you could fill that in, I could probably help you with. I hope I can help you with the answer. If I don't know, then we'll certainly get back to you along the way as we go forward here. Michael says the village of Monticello, Illinois, banned kratom altogether, noting they're having issues with it. While we advocated for leaf, shared testimony. Police chief is claiming they're not even seeing leaf being sold, just synthetic 7-OH. Does KCPA fix those local bans? How can we push for KCPA legislation in Illinois? Also, would there ever be a way kratom could be sold in a standalone store with employees who can educate customers? That's not a gas station and vape shops. The stigma is atrocious and drawing ongoing unwanted attention. Michael, you raised a lot of issues here and very legitimate questions. First, the frustration is that somebody in a local government has read something on the internet and they run with it as though it's the gospel truth. And so our challenge is to re-educate people that do that. One of the things that we're doing is trying to encourage Commissioner McCary to either take down or to substantially modify the Kratom and the FDA and Kratom webpage, because that is a source of disinformation. It is outdated, incomplete, and in some cases flat wrong. And yet these local governments always go to it because it's one of the lead stories that comes up in a Google search. So we're working on that. I'm glad to hear that a law enforcement officer says that they don't even see leaf being sold, just the synthetics, because that helps to focus on what the real problem is. But the critical question you asked is, the KCPA fix these local bans? Unfortunately, there is a strong current of support for local home rule in all of these legislatures. So they resist the idea that a statewide bill would strip a locality from having a bill that is more stringent than what the state law is. I'm frankly rethinking that strategy, that we've said, okay, we'll have to live with that because it does exactly what you've just described here. You could have a state KCPA and a locality can ban it because they get driven by whatever bit of misinformation or advocacy that they have. So we're in the process of developing our current 2026 KCPA, and we're going to address this issue. It will not be a perfect uniform system because there are some states where we couldn't get a KCPA passed if we had that kind of preemption for local control. If our federal bill passes, we're going to have a provision in there that strips all of the existing laws, including in the states and localities, that allows for, under the definitions of what a properly formulated kratom product is. So hopefully that'll solve the problem, but that's a ways off, obviously. And on the issue of of kratom being sold in a standalone store and the stigma that's associated with gas stations and vape shops. I understand completely this issue, but I'll tell you what the NIDA director, Dr. Nora Volkow, said, and then what Dr. Jack Henningfield said in response to a question before the Louisiana legislature. Dr. Volkow's position is that kratom can be a very valuable, potentially a very valuable harm reduction tool for people that are struggling with addictions to illicit drugs. That's an important function that kratom could have, because we know the crisis that people get into that are overdosing on opioids. And some clarity was provided in response to a question from a Louisiana senator to Jack Henningfield, asking is, how do you justify kratom products being sold in gas stations? And that stigma is real. And Jack Henningfield, when I first heard it, it stunned me, because uh, his basis for the answer was fascinating. He said that if the product formulation that complies with state law, which is a critical threshold, as long as it's formulated and labeled the way the state law, in this case the KCPA, requires, then it should be sold in every outlet, because, in Jack's view, these people that are struggling with these addictions or with potential dangerous products that could cause an overdose are typically people that either don't have access to an addiction recovery bed because of the area they live in, or if a bed is available, it's too expensive to access. And so you leave people out in the hinterlands without any access to responsible treatment for the illicit drugs that they're on. And kratom offers what the Johns Hopkins University study demonstrated, a pathway and an off ramp to those dangerous addictions. And so his concluding statement to this legislator was, I hope it's available at every retail outlet possible, as long as it is conforming to the product formulation and labeling standards. Now, Michael, you make a great point. The stigma that has been attached to it, because we see kratom being sold in vape shops, in gas stations, and in smoke shops. And in Ohio, it was really an interesting issue that came up, where a large convenience store chain objected to the rule of the Ohio Department of Agriculture that said that they couldn't sell kratom products, and yet that same customer could walk across the street to a smoke shop and purchase it. And the difference between them was that at the convenience store, they sold hot dogs and other food products. And because they sold food in that establishment, that was the basis for the Department of Agriculture in Ohio to ban the sale of kratom products. That is an insane situation. Uh, but the underlying question is, where are the appropriate locations where kratom can be sold? And you're absolutely correct, Michael, that the stigma that's there, we probably have to do a good education program here. But the impetus for much of what we hear in criticizing kratom is because you can buy it in a gas station. And so that's part of the issue we contend with. I know in some states, they've added the provision to the Kratom Consumer Protection Act where it's required to be behind the counter. So it's not like you can walk in to a convenience store, you see this attractive marketing box that sells kratom, you pick it up and you buy it. Having it behind the counter might be a solution, because then you have to ask for it, and that's a barrier that might take away some of the stigma and certainly the risk of having a kid purchase it and the convenience store clerk doesn't pay attention and they sell it to them. That's obviously a problem. So these issues we're going to continue to wrestle with and try to resolve as we work with these state legislatures going forward. Tracy asked, in New York, the labeling and age restrictions passed the Senate and Assembly, but the governor is yet to sign. What is the status? We are working closely with the governor's staff, trying to inform them about the issue here that is in front of us with onerous labeling restrictions. We can live with, if necessary, the 21 and under age restriction, because many states do that. But labeling is a real problem, and the kind of labeling restrictions. So we have sent a letter to the governor. We have had meetings with their staff through our lobbying team, And we're working hard on this issue and hope that the governor either seeks to amend the bill or just vetoes it. So still yet to be determined on that. It's not the worst bill in the world, but it certainly creates labeling chaos because a manufacturer wants to sell their products in all 50 states. And you get into this circumstance where every state has a different permutation of what the labeling requires. It's chaos. And so we think that makes no sense. And it's a hindrance to what we're doing. And so it doesn't make any sense for a consumer to have to be deprived of a Kratom product because a state has an onerous labeling restriction on it. So we're going to continue to work on that. Nicholas asks, he's from Wisconsin, what's any new updates for Wisconsin? I spoke with Speaker Robin Vos, and interestingly, to the Senate president. And the Senate president, we were on this trip to Iceland with the National Conference of State Legislatures, and by happenstance, as I was taking the bus from the airport to the hotel, this woman sat next to me, and she is the Senate president. And I introduced myself, and I said, I'm with the American Kratom Association, and it's Senator Peskowski, and she said, we need to get that bill passed. And she spent 45 minutes in a intense discussion about her recommendations on how to overcome the barriers that we had in getting it through the House and then over to the Senate. And it was her belief that the governor would sign it. So there were lots of questions that brought the answers to which brought clarity to the status we are in Wisconsin. So we've adopted a two-step process. First, we are going to appeal to the Controlled Substances Board to require them to hold a public hearing and have a vote on whether Kratom meets the 8 factors under the Wisconsin Controlled Substances Act. It does not. They've already said that. They communicated that in official communication to the legislature, but their position is that since the legislature enacted the ban, they want the legislature to remove it. But under Wisconsin law, that's not the way it works. The Controlled Substances Board has the authority and the right to change any status of any scheduling or to add substances to scheduling, whether the legislature has done it or not. So that'll be our first line of attack. And then, of course, once they remove Kratom from the Controlled Substances Act, there has to be a commitment from the legislature to move forward. And the Speaker and the Senate President and I conferred, and they're committed to that pathway. So I think that we have a chance in Wisconsin as we go forward here to get them going forward. Let's see. Misty says, I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. Are people hearing me okay? I think she said, put your mouths in the mics. I don't know. So that's Misty, you can inform me more if there's anything I need to know. Joseph asked about Connecticut. I think I've already covered that. We've appealed for a hearing, and we're going to go into the next legislative session to correct that particular restriction. Heidi says, happy birthday to Mike. I add in too. Joseph, just a state issue. Jan asked, are there any updates on Massachusetts? Massachusetts is a complex state in that it moves very, very slowly. And so in the last hearing that was held, I had to participate remotely. And because of the chaotic nature of the hearing, where the chairman was calling on legislators who had a variety of bills before him, whenever they showed up, then he called them up to the mic. And there were so many bills and so many proponents from the legislature who testified. And then they had panels on some of the bills. But by the time they got to ours, the Zoom time had run out. And so we didn't get to have any Zoom participants. But John Shinholzer reported to me, who was there in person, that he had many conversations with some of the legislatures. And I think we have some, at least we advanced the needle on, or advanced the ball on educating some of these legislators about it. So we're working hard there as we go forward. Misty clarified that she's talking about people getting up at these local hearings and putting their mouths to the mic. Thank you, Misty, for that, because I certainly agree with that. Josh asked about Florida how is parts per million dry weight being dealt with? And how do kava bars deal with a portion about labeling package on a cup for sale? These are the part of the complex issues, Josh, that we're dealing with the Florida Department of Agriculture and the Attorney General's office. We have another round of conversations tomorrow scheduled. I've met with the Attorney General's staff in Tallahassee. We had a great conversation. I informed them that the parts per million by dry weight was probably the wrong standard. They're coming around to that. We've had good scientific backup. Their question is, what is the right standard? And there's some there are interesting issues here. First off, no consumer understands what a parts per million by dry weight means. And if somebody does, they're pretty wonky. But the normal standard for labeling talks about milligrams and serving sizes. And so you can convert that 400 parts per million to a 0.04 by dry weight, but that's too low because there are many kratom products that would be illegal, and you would create a felony situation for manufacturers that may just tick above that slightly from batch to batch. So we're asking them to consider changing the standard from parts per million to a milligram limit. But if they're going to keep the parts per million, they have a conversion chart so that an inspector doesn't walk into a store and say, "Oh, you're selling a product and it says it's 400 parts per million, but we tested it and it's 402 parts per million." You could go up to 2,000 parts per million, and you would still be within the naturally occurring safe level for 7-OH in its naturally occurring metabolite form. I think that's the right conversion, but we think that there should be at least a recognition of the conversion factor from the parts per million on the label. Currently, they have told us that they're not going to seize products, that they're going to require on a case-by-case basis the manufacturer to apply stickers to their products until they flush out the inventory to demonstrate that they meet the standard of the parts per million. And then hopefully we'll have ongoing discussions in the next couple of days. So really, in terms of the kava bars, this has been a problem that I think can only be resolved by the state legislature, because I think it's fair to characterize the Department of Agriculture as being anti-kratom. They've demonstrated that in every way possible. They put in the discussions we've had with them, they're proposing unreasonably low limits that would essentially make kratom a placebo. That, for example, they at one point recommended no more than 2 milligrams in a serving size of a kratom product. That's ridiculous. But it shows you their bias. And so I think the legislature is going to have to weigh in on this when they convene in February or in January. So that might be our solution there. But until then, there's enough uncertainty about this rule that I think we can stay, pretty much in the status quo and continue to work with it. But Josh, thank you for that question, because it is particularly difficult to kind of get through all this. But we're doing our best on it, and we will keep people posted on this issue as we go forward. I think I've reached well, let me see if I've reached the end of the questions. Let me go back up and make sure. I think that's all the questions so far. So if there's any additional person who wants to speak, you can raise your hand and we'll give you a chance to do that. Thank you for those people that express appreciation for the work that the AK is doing. Sometimes people say, "Oh, that's Mac." It's not. There's a team behind us of people that are working every day to support the mission to ensure that consumers have access to safely formulated and properly labeled products. And the accolades go to them because they're there every day doing this. And so I think that they deserve obviously the appreciation that you've expressed on this. It's my honor to be working in this space right now, because what started out for me in 2016 as a short-term lobbying gig of what I expected to be 4 months, that at the end of that fourth month, I was offered the opportunity to stay with the AKA, and it's been absolutely fabulous to learn and be a part of this movement going forward. So I thank you for all of that. Jordan Omby has raised his hand. So Mark, if we can elevate Jordan, that would be terrific. So Jordan, you're here and you just have to mute yourself and the floor is yours.
I apologize. I accidentally hit the button. It was on, yeah, it was on accident.
Oh, okay. Well, while you're here, you have anything to say? He left. Okay. Well, that's all right. I'm not a tech wizard, and I've made the same kind of issue a number of times in not getting this thing right. Anyone else before we close out has any comments or would like to ask a question? We're certainly here to do it. Thanks to everyone that's on the live stream. Um, I'll just close out with this. I think all of us know that there is a very strong reaction by the 70H consumers to this recommendation by the HHS and FDA. And I get asked routinely, what role did AKA have in promoting this? And I can tell you, we started beating this drum when it became clear to us, based on the statements made by the chief scientist from Hart about the research and science that had been completed that was non-existent prior to market entry. Our mission has always been to protect consumers. And when I saw the ramping up of 7OH products that I consider to be extraordinarily high at 7.5 milligrams, and today you go out and look in the marketplace and you see the levels at which they are promoting products, none of which they have any kind of scientific data to show that they have a reasonable basis for safety under labeling restrictions. And then you see the rogue 7OH manufacturers who are packaging their products clearly to be attractive to children, all to make the almighty dollar and not have any responsibility for the marketplace, and knowing it's going to attract attention, but they're out, people that say, "I'll make a buck and I'll be out of here." When I saw that Vince Sanders, who's one of the primary 7OH manufacturers and raw material suppliers to other brands, when he was asked in a messaging from one of his distributors about what should be the next step for us, given what the FDA and HHS are doing, and Vince Sanders' response was, "Hey, keep selling. We couldn't have better advertising." And of course, the theory behind that is that if there's an announcement for a scheduling, then people will go out, and maybe new people saying, "Wow, they're going to schedule it. I'm going to go try it." Or people that are current consumers start to hoard it. And so that is all about getting money. And it's not about saying, "Hey, maybe we need to step back and we ought to restrict the marketing to children. Maybe we ought to restrict the levels at which the serving sizes should be there and try to develop some standard for that." None of that happened. Instead, you have the encouragement within the supply chain for 7OH products to be sold because it's the race to the bank. And that's disappointing. When I heard Vince Sanders testify, both at the Rhode Island legislature, where he said 28 milligrams was an appropriate serving size, for which there is no science to back that up. And in fact, based on the science that's available, that might be an extraordinarily high level. And then to testify subsequently before the Massachusetts legislature that you could consume in one sitting 2 pounds of 7OH and you would still be alive at the end of it. That's not the standard. And I don't know that that's true, by the way. And I've told people, and maybe some of you have heard this, that after that hearing concluded, one of the legislators grabbed me and said, "Why don't we set it up for him to come here in person?" Because he had testified remotely. He said, "Let's get him here in person. Let's wire him up to all of the vital sign machinery, and let's let him start eating 7OH, and we'll know exactly how much you can consume before you do die." And that was funny, but it reveals a sort of a sad truth about this is not the way we should be advocating for a substance that has come under scrutiny and does not have the science to back up its safety. So there's no safety data that would suggest that eating 2 pounds of 7OH in a single setting would be in any way safe, and much less not kill you. No one knows that. And I don't think Vince wants to be on the end of that experiment to find out it does kill you. So, and based on some of the studies that have been done, I think it surely would. But Our goal is to protect consumers. And that's why we started in 2019 ringing the alarm bell about 7OH, which at the time we said could be no greater than 2% of the overall fraction of the alkaloids in the product. That converts to less than 1 milligram. And now you have the 7OH people, I think inappropriately, making false claims saying that, oh, this is a natural product. You cannot get to the levels of 7OH in the products that they're marketing today at the serving size levels that they have from natural processes. There needs to be an oxidation process using, as Mr. Sanders himself said, the same chemicals you use to shock your pool in the backyard, which creates a chemically manipulated opioid, according to the Commissioner McCary, and it is a product that cannot in any way be determined to be kratom, because now the majority component of that product is 7-hydroxymetrogenine. That's it. And this idea that somehow it's safe because 500 million pills have been sold, or because people haven't died from it, which really may be more reflective of the lack of accuracy of our safety signal mechanisms, and maybe it's because of mislabeling of deaths, with coroners saying it's a kratom death without looking at whether it's a 7OH death. There are lots of potential variants in that need to be examined, but we should be cautious when it comes to people's safety. And I think that the kratom industry has been careful. I know at the AKA we have a variety of programs, not only our GMP program, which speaks to the processes by which products are manufactured, and then we have the KCPAs, and we have our truth in labeling program that does not permit a kratom manufacturer to attach to the marketing of their products a label that makes an illegal therapeutic claim. That's important. And yet you look at these 7OH products and they're all over the place. There aren't many that don't do that. And so I think that's part of the problem that we're running into here with 7OH. And I'll tell you that I think that the day of reckoning is here. And how this shakes out will have a dramatic impact on the future of kratom consumer safety going forward. So we're on the side, hopefully, of the angels as we work forward here going forward. Thanks to everyone for being with us. We appreciate the efforts. I encourage you to take the swift kick in the butt that I'm recommending and show up at these local hearings and at the state hearings when you can. And we're going to be there as best we can, arguing with you, with a local person there, so that we aren't exposed to that criticism from some of these local people. We are deeply grateful for the efforts of all those that are volunteering to stand up and help us in this fight, because ultimately we're going to win. So thanks, everyone. We hope you have a great night, and this recording will be available, obviously, on YouTube by tomorrow, and you can circulate it to your friends. Thanks so much.